Well, boys and
Okay.
girls, shall we go ahead and get started here?
I think we should.
All righty. It looks like we got the regular crowd. Lone Tree is kind of looking like Cheers, where you see all the normal folks there.
Where's the beer?
Everybody knows your name.
Everybody knows your name, yes. Do we have any guests in the room at Lone Tree?
Nope.
Okay. I do see that we have one guest here on Zoom, RJ.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Oh, great.
So we'd like to have a quick chat with our guests before we get started into the meeting proper, and just want to find out how long you've been shooting, how you found the club, that kind of stuff. What kind of photography you like to do, and those things.
Well, that's a lot. Well, first of all, been shooting a camera for a long time, but family, friends, vacations, and all that sort of things. And I finally decided to, after I retired earlier this year, the wife kept on bugging me, and what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I'm going to go out and start photography. And because she was the insistent one, that meant my budget for the camera got bigger.
Nice.
So I end up, I bought a Hasselblad. I have a X1D. Still learning the camera. I've been basically researching different types of photography I may like. I live on top of Conifer Mountains, so I back up to Sawton State Park. But landscapes really aren't the thing I want to do. It's just that's my day trip. It's just walking out on the deck. So I was intrigued last week on your ICM video that I watched, and I've been searching different clubs and different avenues. I've been to the Denver group, just kind of feeling them out, and I'll probably join a couple clubs, just for getting as much as I can at this point. The more information, the better, and I'm hoping that somewhere in that flux of information, I'll find what I want to shoot and what I want to learn.
Awesome. Well, we're glad that you found us, and that ICM presentation. I think a few of the people on will agree that that was one of the better presentations that we've had in the past year or so. It was excellent. And, well, hopefully, I'll say when you join our club. A little wishful thinking there. We do have monthly photo competitions. We have a different topic each month. So we do try to challenge our members with different types of photography, different techniques, those kind of things.
Great.
All right.
All sounds great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. All right. So later this month, our competition is on November 26th. That would be a Tuesday. Just like in past years, with the Thanksgiving holiday that week, doing it on a Wednesday night, we'll probably get hardly anybody at the meeting. So we do it on Tuesday. It's going to be Zoom only. The city of Lone Tree has all the community rooms booked on that Tuesday, so we'll have to do Zoom only. And of course, everybody got the email about the awards dinner. Hopefully you're considering joining us for that evening on December 11th. And get your information into Gwen. I will be sending out another reminder email probably next week. But you want to get your reservations in before the end of the month, please. And the one bit of business that we need to take care of is to vote on dues for next year. Earlier this year, we decided to pay our judges and presenters a little bit more money. And we've been at a $50 mark for dues for 4 years, or 6 or 7 years at $40 before that. But with everything getting a little more expensive, as you know, we just need to bump it up $10 to $60. So according to the bylaws, we do need to get a vote on that. So for the people on Zoom, I've just popped up a poll. So if you would please vote on that, give me a yes or a no. RJ, obviously, as a guest, you're not eligible to vote for this thing. And if Bill, if you would get a count in the room, I can tally that and add it to what we've got here.
I'm sorry, I forgot we
There we
were
go.
muted. 7 yeses and no, 0 no's.
Okay, thank you all. So if I had a gavel, I would slam it down and say motion passed. Thank you all for doing that. Let me end this.
Anybody who said no.
Say what now?
We want the names of everybody who said no.
Well, I'm not willing to do that. We did there anybody who's a dissenting vote, well, that's their prerogative. But anyways, the majority has said yes, so that definitely will pass, and I will have the updated membership forms and information on the website before the end of the week. So, who is introducing Ben this evening?
Probably me.
There we go.
Good. I don't have a long, are we ready to get going?
Yes, I don't have anything else. I've covered what I need to cover, and we're off and running.
All right, well, since becoming program chair, this is the first time I've had somebody in the group do a presentation. So I'm really excited, Ben, for it. And for that reason, I don't have a long an introduction because we all know Ben, so, or at least we certainly know his work, which is beautiful. So I took this off of his Instagram page that says, my work is based on my passion for traveling, my admiration for the beauty of this earth, and my constant curiosity about people and their cultures. And I just felt like that was really poignant. So that's my introduction for you, Ben. And I urge you to fill in some additional information if you want.
That's thank you. No, I'm literally I'm just a dude looking like a dude pretending to be a dude. That's all. No, that's it. I mean, I love photography. I love traveling. I love pretending that I can come back with somewhat of good images to share. And that's it. Thank you. That was beautiful.
Well, you do have that award-winning image right behind you, so kudos for that.
Yes, and I was looking at that, and I did that before the award. I should probably take it down because anyway, yeah. I try to be as humble as I can with photography because I certainly don't see myself as a brilliant photographer. I think I know how to press the shutter, which is good, point, click. But anyway.
All right, well, if everybody on Zoom would please mute so that we can hear Ben talking. Ben, of course, you don't have to mute. And if you're ready to share your screen, your presentation, we'll get rolling here.
Let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead.
And from the Lone Tree, I would disagree. I think you are a brilliant photographer. More people will know that in the next hour. And your website is one of the most impressive that I've ever visited.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the result of me being in IT. I was a software engineer for 20 plus years. I just a couple of months ago, I just decided to call it quits with corporate America and just focus on photography. So so thank you. Thank you. So we're going to be talking about black and white conversion. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that and I say this seriously, but one of the greatest things that I could have ever done was joining this group. Early in January, I submitted some images for the placement committee, and I got really good feedback. But I also got feedback that made me wonder if I truly knew what I was doing. Now, the answer to that question is no, I didn't know what I was doing. And the answer to that question now would be no, I don't know what I'm doing. But thanks to that feedback that I got, it made me wonder whether there's different ways of doing what I thought I was doing right. Now, I started with photography several years ago. And at the time where I started with photography, things were set for you, right? You would buy a roll of T-Max 100 or Plus X or Delta or whatever it is, and there was nothing you can do to change the curve and how the film would react to light. With digital, that change, well, I got to realize that there's far more control now that I have than what I had before, and consequently, I needed to revise what an accurate, I should not say that, what a reasonable black and white conversion as far as my likings meant to me. Now, with that, I want to say that I'm certainly not trying to go ahead and say that I'm an expert. I've been researching and subscribing and paying for a whole bunch of people. Facebook likes me because they pop an ad like, this is the ultimate black and white conversion, and I buy it, right? But I really want to learn. I really wanted to get to a point in where I'm comfortable with what I am doing and being able to grow from there with enough knowledge and enough information to perhaps call my photography a craft. But anyway, so we're going to be talking about my method of black and white conversion. I am not implying that this is the right way of doing it. I will go over with you different ways of doing black and white conversions, which there's plenty of ways to convert an image. I am going to be using 3 tools. First of all, Lightroom, then Photoshop, and finally Nik. Most of you are familiar with Nik. I think it's a great tool. But you will see that I use Nik really as the designated hitter, right? And I will be talking about the reasons why. Now, Nik, it's extremely powerful, and I am in the process right now of trying to understand and try to break it down in a way that it's palatable to me and so I can use it with more confidence. So for right now, as I said, it's a designated hitter, and we'll be going through some of the methods, and once again, Lightroom, Photoshop, and Nik. So what you're seeing here on the screen, and I'm going to go to galleries, you're seeing a couple of images that I chose for this presentation. Primarily, I want to talk about this for the first part of the presentation, which is an RGB, just boxes, and then I have a couple of other colors that give different luminosity. I'm going to be talking about how to convert this image to black and white with the available tools that we have. And then towards the end of the presentation, I will be arriving at my preferred method and explaining why. Hopefully the why will become evident as we're going through the different conversion methods. So starting with RGB. One of the first things that I do when converting to black and white is make sure that the color image is accurate. Some of us who should digital, we do have the option of seeing a black and white preview, regardless the raw image will be in color. I usually shoot raw, and once I bring the images into Lightroom, they're in color. I don't use the black and white preview. But anyway, so the first thing that I try to do is I try to make sure that the colors are accurate. In this case, since these are true RGB images, I don't have to worry about color correction or light or light sources, kelvins or anything like that. So one of the ways that, or one of the things that we have available, I'm trying to move this to the side, to convert an image to black and white, it's with Lightroom. So in this particular case, I went into the develop settings of Lightroom, and I'm going to go ahead and go to Adobe Monochrome and select it there. Now, you notice right away that this method of converting, you notice that the RGB scale, it's producing roughly 2 tones. So there's very little difference between the red and the blue. The green went completely white. So this is just by going to develop, choosing monochrome, and just doing that. So right off the bat, you guys can see that we're losing a whole bunch of information, especially if you look down here when we use this method. All right, so I'm going to go back to full color. Now, if I were to go ahead and take this into Photoshop right away and use what Photoshop recommends, and actually, let's go ahead and do it. So in this particular case, I am going to go ahead and I'm a Windows user, so I do apologize. I don't have the translations to Mac, but I believe that Control translates to Command. So in this case, I'm doing Control E. I'm opening Photoshop. So here in Photoshop, I can go ahead and go to image mode and then go to grayscale. And it's asking me if I want to discard the color information. I'm going to go ahead and say yes for now. Now, you see that this conversion method does gives us a little bit better definition between the RGBs and the colors down here. Now, the problem is that we just discarded all color information. So if we want to make some adjustments on a black and white image based on color selection, we can't. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of here, tell it not to save, go back to Lightroom, and then go ahead and go back to Photoshop and talk about another way of converting an image to black and white, which is by means of hue saturation. When you desaturate the image altogether, once again, you're losing a whole bunch of information between the RGBs, between all the colors. So it works okay, but you know, I still have the color information. I still have my background layer. I could have duplicated this image, make this an undestructive edit, but just from the beginning, I'm losing a whole bunch of data in terms of color, converted to black and white, and most importantly, luminosity. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer. So finally, one of the better ways of converting black and white, it's using Nick's Silver Efx. If you guys have Nick, it works really well. So when I come to Nick and just the immediate conversion, you guys see that I have a whole bunch of information, much more information than I had with the other couple of methods. But still not enough. I'm still missing something. Now, I can go ahead and change the midtones here. But notice how the entire image reacts to this level, right? So it's changing the midtones for everything. It's not isolating any particular color that I might want to pop or not. So while, but you know, I usually use Nick for my lazy edits. But it's still not enough when I really want to go ahead and have a whole bunch of detail on this image and work on this image for, you know, to pop out certain colors, luminosity, things of that nature. So I'm going to go ahead and click cancel, close without saving. So the method that I prefer to use, now that we talked about the methods that are available and the reasons why I choose not to go that route, it's a method in Photoshop. Now, before I go to Photoshop and show you guys how I usually convert my black and white images, regardless of what I'm going to be doing with the image in terms of conversion, I usually start in Lightroom. And what I do, first of all, you know, it's never a bad idea to make sure that you like your image in black and white. So not every image converts to black and white in an appealing way. And keep in mind that what I'm throwing out there, it's cognizant that it's based on our own personal preferences, our vision, our artistry, whatever it is that you want to call it, right? There's what I might like, it's something that you guys might not like. There's no it's not a golden coin. I don't know if that term translate to English well, but anyway, um, you might like something different than what I like, and that's absolutely fine. But regardless, what I try to do is I try to go ahead and first of all, I'm going to go ahead and use this image. And see if this image is something that I would like to convert in black and white. So what I do is I go to develop mode and then just quickly hover over the Adobe monochrome as what we did before and see if I have enough information for this image to be converted into black and white. What I look for, it's natural contrast, it's luminosity, it's well-defined highlights and shadows, and well, composition. In black and white, I think composition is a little bit more important because we have less elements to be able to guide our eyes towards what we're trying to show. In this particular case, this image, what I was trying to show, it's the street vendor in Xochimilco selling his bracelets. I'm going to be submitting this image for next month's competition. So I'm like, all right, this is going to be a good image to go ahead and work on. I do like it in black and white. I got good skies. I got different tones, even with just this monochrome, Adobe monochrome conversion. And so I'm happy with this image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to library and I am going to go ahead and the first thing, once again, that I do when I'm converting an image to black and white, look to see if I like it. But then once I'm happy with what I'm doing is, and by the way, I do have a PDF that I will post towards the end with all the steps that I am talking about here for you guys to have. But anyway, so I come into Lightroom and I go to the detail tab. And the first thing that I do is I get rid of any kind of sharpening the Lightroom it's giving me. I will sharpen this image towards the end. And I do like the results better. Now, I mentioned that I've been researching and I've been looking and learning. So a whole bunch of the information that you're hearing tonight is information. It's a cumulative of different people, from Bolcher Labs, Joe Bolcher to Joel Grims and a whole bunch of other people that I've learned from, and I've been able to come up with this way that suits me, and that's the main key, right? I am happy with the results that I am getting. So I don't want you guys to think that this is me being a Lightroom and Photoshop expert. No, as I said, it's just me trying to learn and trying to come up with something that suits my style of photography. So anyway, so once I got rid of the sharpening, I go ahead and denoise the image. Denoise in Lightroom has been fantastic. I use it on every single image, regardless if I am shooting at 100 ISO. So in this case, it was early morning. You guys can see that there's really nothing to denoise, but I still go ahead and use it. And once I get back from the denoising over here, the next thing that I do is I go to the lens correction tab or module, and I remove chromatic aberration and I enable profile correction. I have it for my camera. So this Lightroom does this automatically for every shot that I bring. I have both of my the cameras that I shoot profiles dialed into Lightroom, and so I don't have to worry about this. But I do come here and do change the vignetting. So when you apply chromatic aberration, Lightroom also will apply some sort of vignetting. I'm hoping that you guys can see the difference between the no vignetting and what Lightroom is recommending. I don't know how much you guys know, but I will just throw this out there. Whenever you change a default setting that Lightroom has applied, if you double click on the layer arrow, it will go back to that default. So what I usually do with vignetting, I go ahead and take it to around anywhere between 20 and 30%. Once I am happy with this, what I'll do is I'll do Control E and go to Photoshop. Now, once I'm in Photoshop, I mentioned earlier that the first thing that I want to do for a black and white conversion is make sure that the color is accurate. The better colors that I have on an image, the better luminosity, the better my conversion is going to be. So first and foremost, I go ahead and duplicate the image or the background image because I prefer to work in non-destructive edit modes. That way, if I need to come back or change something, I always have the possibility of doing that. And also, you know, at the end of the conversion, if there is a need for me to go ahead and select something from the image based on color, I still have that information, which is another advantage of this method. So once I've duplicated the image, the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and color correct this image. So I'm going to start with curves. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to identify and set my white point of this image. So you open a curve adjustment on top of your images. And then what you do is you bring your black slider all the way to the right to try to identify your white point. Most of the times you have to zoom. If you are as anal as me, you really want to get it. You really want to select this point. Make sure that your sample size is set to 5x5 average. Click on the white dropper and select your white point. You will see immediately that if there is any shift as far as the color conversion from the white point, it will be noticed by the line in the curve. And in this particular case, you know, my image was a little bit darker than what it should have been. So probably I underexposed a third or so. But anyway, so this is the first part. Then I do another curve. And in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and identify the black point. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the white slider all the way to the left. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to find the black part of the image. I'm happy with this area. I go ahead and select my black dropper, select it there, and see that it didn't change much. Now, sometimes it is not necessary. I prefer to go ahead and do it all the time, and that is to be able to choose my middle grade point. Now, for the middle grade point, what I do is I go ahead and create a new layer. So this icon, new layer here. I go to fill. So edit, fill. I go ahead and choose 50% gray. And I click OK. Now the image is going to be completely covered, but then I go ahead and change my blend mode and set it to difference. And what difference is doing is that it's exposing all of the colors that are above or below middle gray. Now, once I'm done this, I go ahead and do an adjustment layer. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and set it to threshold. Once I have this on adjustment layer, this little graph will come out. You take the slider all the way to the left, and then slowly start bringing your slider to the right. The first thing that appear on the image, so I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys this view, but the first little dots that start appearing on the image, the black dots, that's your middle gray points. So in this particular case, I can see that right around here, there's some dots that are already showing up. So that's definitely middle gray. I'm going to go ahead and just move the slider a little bit, zoom in so I can have a better sample size. Go to my eyedropper, choose color sample tool, and put a marker. Now, once I have this marker, I go ahead and select these two layers, delete them, create another curve. In this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and choose my middle gray eyedrop, zoom in, and sample this area. Now, it didn't do much, but I still feel better when I do that. You know, once I'm done with this, I go ahead and grab these layers, group them, and call them correction. So hopefully the difference will be noticeable on Zoom, but when I hide this layer and when I go ahead and show it again, I can see that there's really been a difference in color. So I'm happy with this, and I am going to go ahead and use Control-Shift-Alt-E to merge up a layer and keep going with the next part of the process. So once I have my image and I am happy with the color correction, what I do next is I go ahead and try to go ahead and increase the luminosity of my image. Luminosity, it's the areas that are brighter in the image, but then again, not to be confused with just brightness or colors, because certain objects will reflect regardless of the color more or less light. But so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and grab as much information as I can. In order to do that, what I do is I go to my channels, and then I inspect every channel, every RGB channel, to see which one has the most contrasts and which one has the least contrast. In this particular case, going through the red, green, and blue channels, I think that my red channel, it's richer, and the weaker channel, it's the blue channel. Now, this image is a little misleading because obviously we have a big sky, so we have a whole bunch of white over here. But if you guys really look closer, you see that the red is providing a whole bunch of information everywhere in the image. And then the blue, it's kind of mudding all the colors up here. So all the papers, there's a name for them, which I don't know, but all the papers that are, you know, above of this guy, they look kind of like the same tone. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and merge my red channel into my blue channel, ultimately ending with 2 red channels before I do my black and white conversion. So how I do that is that I go to Image, Apply Image, and since I already have my blue selected, what I need to do is I want to go ahead and select my red, set this to normal, and then click OK. Now, what I've done is, since I have 2 red channels now in this RGB image, make this image look a little bit kind of funky, but I will go ahead and change my blend mode to luminosity, and that will correct a little bit of the colors, but then again, it is certainly not an RGB image. I don't know if you guys can see the difference between me hiding and showing the layer. Now, what I've done is that I've managed to come up with an image that I've increased or saturated the luminosity, if you may. I color corrected it, and then I am ready to go ahead and do my conversion. Now, if you really want to, you can go ahead and still further correct the colors by converting the image to LAV mode and changing the AMV channels to it. I've noticed that when I've done that, because it's far more subjective that I don't necessarily gain much from it. So I've included the LAV on the PDF that I will send to you guys if you guys want to try it. I could demonstrate it, but as I said, I've ultimately decided not to use the LAV color correction because it's very subjective. It has to do with you moving your slider and getting to a point that you like the image. Monitors, calibration will play a part into this. So as I said, I don't think that I have enough technical information for me to accurately make the decision with LAV. It's more, how do I feel about it? So I decided not to use it. As I said, it's on the PDF if you guys want to try it. It didn't do much for me. So once I got my channels, my luminosity, and my color correction, I am going to go ahead and do, once again, Control-Shift-Alt-E, merge up, and then I'm ready for black and white conversion. The method that I prefer to do black and white conversion involves 2 hue and saturation layers. Remember earlier I showed you guys what does one saturation layer does. It kind of, it loses some of the information, but 2 hue and saturation layers does the trick really well for me, and I'll show you guys why. So immediately I'll go ahead and create 2 hue and saturation layers. With the top layer selected, I'm going to go ahead and desaturate the image completely. This is doing exactly the same thing as I was showing before, but then again, here is where the cool, the cool things from the second layer does. But before I start working on the second layer, what I need to do is I need to go ahead and change the blending mode to color. I go ahead and select the second hue and saturation layer. I will go ahead and increase this to around 75, just so I can see what I am doing, because what I'm going to be doing next is I am going to be changing the hues. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move this around so that you guys can see what's happening with the image, right? Now, I try to go slow. Once again, I'm going to reset it to the middle point, and then I am going to go ahead and find the right balance between the sky and the rest of the information that the image is presenting, to the point that I'm comfortable and say, okay, this is what I like. Now, I do want my sky to be darker, but I also want to be able to have recognizable tonality between all these papers, because I know from looking at the color image that there's 4 different colors up there. So I do want to go ahead and have different shades of gray representing those colors accurately. So I am going to go ahead and keep this somewhere around here. Now, while I'm changing this, notice that also the bracelets are changing because they're different colors. So I try to keep an eye on the entire image, make sure that everything is balanced and the way that I want it. So somewhere around here, I feel comfortable with that. And keep in mind that I'm using the word feel comfortable. Once again, there's no exact science. It's really playing to your preference and your vision of your image. Now, once I found the hue that suits the mood that I want to go for with this image, I go ahead and reset the saturation to like around 60%, anywhere from 50 to 60%. So right around here. One of the cool things about this method is that you can either go ahead and affect each color with this hue saturation layer, or you can create different hue and saturation layers to go ahead and affect your reds, yellows, greens, cyans, blues, and magentas. In this case, I was messing with a master, but I want to go into the reds. This layer, I don't want to create a new one. I have not found that much need for a new one. I can just do it here. And then I can go ahead and change the hues for the reds. So now notice that in this area of the image where the reds and the pink papers were are being affected when I change my hue. So this allows me to go ahead and increase the difference in tonal range between those particular red papers and the rest of the image to try to come up with distinct tones of black and white. I can go ahead and modify my yellows. There's some yellows over here. Some of the pinks that I have there obviously had a little bit of yellow. I can change my greens. And you can see somewhere around here, that's where the greens are, including the tree. And so I'm going to go somewhere around here. So one of the things that I do want to mention is that earlier I said that one of the reasons that I prefer this method is because it gives me the ability to go ahead and keep the color information in the image and being able to modify it. So I'm not only modifying the hues of a particular gamut, but at some point, if I really want to, I can go ahead and do selections based on colors for the purpose of dodging, burning, and doing some other stuff. So anyway, as far as the initial conversion, I am happy with what I am seeing. So I'm going to go ahead and group these layers, call it conversion, get rid of the caps lock, and Control-Shift-Alt-E merge out. So here I have my image converted to black and white. Now, I'm certainly not done. We're just about, I want to say, a little bit over halfway from my process. What I like doing next, once I have my initial conversion, is I like to go ahead and deal with the midtones. I really like to start working on what I want to make lighter on the image, darker on the image, and the overall balance of the image. So in this particular case, what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be using Nick Collection Silver Efx. So I'm going to be taking this image to Silver Efx, and in Silver Efx, I am going to go ahead and start playing with my midtones. As I said, my main goal right now is to try to balance the image. I don't want to have too dark of areas or too white of areas, and I certainly want to go ahead and play on my subject. And while the bands are important, I think also the person who's selling this wristbands, it's important. So I need to do something to make sure that this guy, it's front and center in my image. And what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be, as I mentioned, changing my midtones here on Nick. In this case, I think I need to make my image overall lighter. So I am lining, or I'm moving the slider of my midtones for them to get lighter. And I will get to a point that I feel comfortable. I don't want to lose too much information. I don't want to lose my dark sky. So I think I am going to leave it somewhere around there. Now, another thing that I do with Nick, with Silver Efx specifically, is I do like moving my amplified whites and amplified blacks slider, and sometimes even the self-contrast. Self-contrast, not that much. I think I get the majority of stuff that I want with just amplifying whites and amplifying blacks. And when you amplify whites in Nick, one of the cool things that they do is that based on middle gray, what they're doing is they're increasing the contrast on your whites on the darker areas. So it doesn't changes the true whites or the clear to whites. It changes the whites in the darker areas. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I'll do have a technical write-up of what I'm trying to say for you guys in this PDF. But anyway, so when I amplify the whites, I go ahead and increase this so I can create a little bit more contrast in my image. I do the same thing with amplified whites, amplified blacks, I'm sorry. This area that's being affected as I am moving this, I'm going to move this all the way to the right so you guys can see the difference. My shadows are being affected. Once again, this is affecting the shadows within the light areas, not necessarily the blacks. And once I get to the point that I'm comfortable, I'm good to go. As I said, sometimes I play with the contrast. With the soft contrast, I am going to move this just a tad so that I can have a little bit better exposure, that's probably not the right word, but luminosity on my subject. I don't want to lose the detail on the ground. I don't want to lose the detail on the papers or the skies. I just want to gain a little bit on him. So once I'm happy with that, I go ahead and I click apply. I come back to Photoshop and I have a much better image than what I started, just even with a conversion. So you can see the difference here after I did the nick. And, you know, I have something that I can start working on. Now, once I got to this point, this is the part that I decide what else do I need to do with my image. Some images I do want to apply some sort of vignetting. Some images, if not most of my images, I want to do some Dutch and burn. This is where the point that I start making decisions is like, what else this image needs to say? And I'm being careful choosing those words. My goal is to be able to hopefully each image be able to tell a story. So at this moment, it's when I'm like, well, is my image telling the story? Is my street vendor clearly identifiable? Will people who have not been in Mexico and seen this kind of vendor will understand that this is a street vendor? And the way I try to answer all of that, it's obviously by manipulating the image and with light, right? So in this case, I would not feel happy going ahead and presenting this image to anyone because I do feel that there are certain areas that should be lighter and there are certain areas that should be darker. So what I will do is I will go ahead and start dutching and burning. One of my preferred methods of dutching and burning, it's by going ahead and by clicking Alt and clicking on the new layer, you get the new layer modal. And I am going to go ahead and call this layer not dodge or burn, but highlights. And I'll explain the reason why. I'm going to go ahead and change my mode to overlay. And I'm going to tell it to fill with neutral color. So I create a layer. I set the mode to overlay. And that's important to remember that overlay would usually be associated with dodging. Now, it's also associated with highlights. And the reason why I call this highlights, and I'll show it in a second, is, but anyway, before I go there, after I go on ahead and create a new layer, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and create a mask. And then while the mask is selected, I'm going to go to image, apply image. And then I am going to go ahead and apply the same image to the mask with my overlay and middle gray base. And what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and expose the highlights of the image, anything that has a lower value than middle gray will be exposed. So I am going to go ahead and make sure that you guys select the layer, not the mask. And once you've selected your layer, what you're going to, excuse me, what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be choosing my brush. And I'm going to go ahead and start. In this case, I have it to Dutch. Yeah, I'm using the white portion of it. In Lightroom, D, you press D on the keyboard. When you're using the brush, it will give you the default. X will switch between dark or a black or a white. So in this particular case, what I have here is I want to go ahead and burn a little bit of the information that I don't want to be that prominent in this image. So in this particular case, you know, I do think that the waistbands are important, but the stripes of the waistbands are too bright for my taste. So I'm going to go ahead and selecting the layer, and with the black brush, I'm going to go ahead and at a 10% opacity, start just going over the white portion of the straps or the cords for the waist, oh, the wristbands. So one of the reasons why I like this method is because I don't have to be extremely judicious by selecting a particular area based on luminosity, because I know that everything that is above middle gray, it's not going to be affected. Now, if I were to go ahead and apply the brush here, this will definitely change. But once again, I don't have to be that judicious, and that's why I prefer to do it with an opacity of 10% and go over several times if I need to, instead of starting with 20 or 30% and do it in one go. So I don't have to worry about the finesse of where am I applying this burn on the white areas. That's what I don't like calling this layer dodge or burn. I rather see it as I am dealing with the highlights or the shadows. So I just want to go over this a couple of times. I want to go ahead and burn this portion here a little bit. This area, I don't want the eyes to go outside of the image, so I want this to be darker. So in this case, I'm going to change the opacity to 40% and really get this dark. And going back here, now I promise I will not be doing this to perfection, like if I was presenting this image for anyone's consideration, but just, as I said, to demonstrate what it is that I do with my black and white conversion process. So once I am happy with the highlights, and I can go ahead and change, by the way, my brush to be on white, and then I can go ahead and lighten certain things. So I'm going to go ahead and, just for the sake of the demonstration, lighten a little bit of this path in hopes that that will help guiding the eye towards my subject. But anyway, once I am done, maybe you can see in Zoom the difference between the really bright strings, and now that I've burned a little bit and I dodged a little bit here. So now that I'm happy with what I've done, then I can go ahead and do the same process I can go ahead and click Alt, new layer. In this case, I'm going to call it shadows. And I am going to go ahead and set this to soft light. Fill with soft light neutral color. Click OK. Come to my mask, create a new mask, go to Image, apply image. Now, in this particular case, what I want to do is I want to expose the darker part of Metal A to the upper portion of the metal gray values. So I need to go ahead and invert my image. Click OK. You guys can see here that now I have the dark portion exposed. So now, same thing with my brush. I can go ahead and zoom into my subject, change my brush size, make sure that I'm at 10% opacity. As I said, I rather do 2 or 3 passes than start really strong. And then I made a mistake, Control C. I need to make sure that I select the layer, not the mask. And then I start going over my subject and dodging him a little bit. In order for you guys to make multiple passes, it's not a matter of just going over. You have to release the mouse so that Photoshop knows that it needs to go in with another 10% and remove some of the information that you're trying to remove. Now, one of the decisions I need to make is that, do I want to go ahead and bring his face a little bit lighter than the rest of his body? In this particular case, I think I want to, so I'm going to go ahead and resize my brush, increase my opacity to 15%, and then just gently going around just his face. Zoom out, go back to 10%, increase my brush size again, and then do one final pass. All right. So I'm doing Control-0 so I can resize this quickly. So I'm getting to a point that I'm liking this image much better than how I started. I'm going to go ahead and group this so that I can show you guys the difference between what it's closer to my final product to when I started, and we can go all the way down to right after we did the conversion. So I am going to go ahead and do Control-Shift-Alt-E, get a new layer. Now, this moment, once again, I can still do more stuff in the image. I can go ahead and do a vignette. I can do a whole bunch of other stuff, but one of the things that I prefer doing over vignetting is, once again, going over Nick. In this case, I'm going to go to color effects. And as I mentioned, one of the things that I prefer over vignetting, you can see that it's here on my favorite. It's darken and lighten center. I do like that better than just the normal vignette. The results, I find them more pleasant. So what I do is I go ahead and apply the darkened and lightened center. Most of the times I move my center. You can do that by clicking on the place center. You get the crosshair, click on what the center you want it to be. But now, it's rare that I usually let it go with what they're recommending as far as the opacity. I usually go ahead and play with this slider to the point that I'm very comfortable, or flat out, I just go ahead and either remove the center luminosity value or the border luminosity value so that it's more of a traditional vignetting. But in this case, most of the times the opacity satisfy what it is that I am going for. So somewhere around 50% is what I found that it's my preferred sweet spot. So somewhere around there, I like. Then the other thing that I do once I'm here in color effects is that I go to Pro Contrast, and I go ahead and use the dynamic contrast slider. And notice how it gently increases my luminosity, especially on the lighter areas of the image. So I try to be judicious with that. I just play with it, go back and forth until I'm happy. I don't want to go too crazy because it kind of overrides what I was doing in terms of the burning of the string. So somewhere around here, I like it because I see a little bit of change here now that we have the darkened edges. I still see the strings. There is a natural gradient that has been formed because of what I've done going upwards. So my lighter area is around here. So I'm feeling happy with this image. Finally, the last thing that I do with Neat Color Effects, I go ahead and go to tonal contrast. I apply tonal contrast, and tonal contrast, it's very nice, but I think me personally that their initial recommendation, it's too harsh. There's too much texture, there's too much definition on this image. So what I usually do with contrast, with tonal contrast, is to bring it down to like around 20%. Just a tad, and you guys can probably see here in this area how it changes. It does gives me a little bit better of texture and clarity on this image. So structure, that's actually a better way of putting it than if I were not to use it. But as I said, I think that the 100% it's too much. So I keep it at around 15%. And once again, every image will go ahead and be different. Some images I do like texture, and I'll show you guys a couple of images where I kept the opacity of the tonal contrast almost at 100%. This is an image of a construction worker in Puerto Escondido against some bricks. So I really wanted that brick to show up. But anyway, in this case, I think that at 20%, it's perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and click apply. And once again, if I were to hide this layer, notice how each layer builds up on the previous one. You guys get to see the difference between how I started and where I'm at right now. Where I'm at right now, it's closer to where I feel comfortable. There's still a couple of things that I would like to do with this image. But this is just nitpicking stuff. I would go ahead and would want to burn this satellite dish. So when it's something that small and when it's a very targeted portion of the image that I want to deal with, I have no problem just using the normal burn tool, selecting highlights. And then my exposure, once again, at 10%, I rather do multiple passes and then just go over this guy here. All right, so once again, I'm just being nitpicky. Control 0. I did a horrible job. You guys can see the artifacting around it. I'm just going to leave it like that. But, I could have done a much better job changing the hardness of my brush. So if I were to go to burn here, I can go ahead and just change the hardness and then going tighter so that the burn, it's a little bit better. But anyway, as I said, I'm gonna leave it like that just for now. Another thing that I would like to do is I see a couple of highlights here that I should burn. I'm not going to do it right now. So now, once I get to this point in the image, I'm almost done. Now, at this moment, what I want to make sure is I want to guarantee that I don't have 100% black or 100% white in this image. One of the things that I found that works really well for me and I really like using, it's camera raw. So while I'm in Photoshop, I go to camera raw, I go ahead and turn my sliders on. In this case, I have nothing. If I were to have something on the dark area that is just a little bit outside, what I do in camera raw is so just for the purpose of the demonstration, I will go ahead and show you guys what I would do. But what I would do is I would go ahead and go to my mask. I will go ahead and create a luminance range mask. I would choose the area that it's outside of the boundaries or the areas that are 100% black. Click on it. There we go. Change my slider so that only that area it's selected. And then since I'm still in the mask, what I would do is that I've noticed that just going ahead and changing my blacks, even 1% will get rid of whatever warnings I'm getting up here. Sometimes it's 2, but it's very little, especially because of the conversion method that we use, right? We are preserving our RGB values true, and black will be the combination of all of them. You can definitely find a whole bunch of images that you can photograph pure black, but it's rare because, well, even black reflects a little bit of light. But anyway, and I do the opposite, the same but the opposite for my white areas that are getting to 100% white. So once I have my tonality and my ranges to the point that I do like them, then what I do next, Control-Shift-Alt-E, is I focus on sharpening. And the sharpening method that I use is I use 2 layers. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer. I'm going to go ahead and hide the top layer right now. I'm going to use the bottom layer and apply a Gaussian blur. And I am going to set the radius to 2%. Usually between 1 and 3%, it's what is recommended. Obviously, the higher your value, the more sharpened your image will be. I try to keep it around 2, which is the midpoint. I go ahead and click OK. The top layer, I go ahead and apply a filter. In this case, it's going to be a high pass filter. I keep the value exactly the same thing as my Gaussian blur layer. So if I were to do 1, this would be 1. If it were to be 3, this would be 3. And I go ahead and click OK. Now, can't see anything, so I need to go ahead and change this to linear light blending mode. Once I have that, my image is sharpened. I can go ahead and still use unsharpen mask if I wanted to. Hopefully you guys can see the results between unsharpened and sharpened. And once I get to this point, what I do is I usually save my image. Very important, don't forget to save. I've lost a whole bunch of images because I forget save. Thank God Photoshop now has auto backups, but back in the days, I've cried many nights because I didn't click Control-S. But anyway, once I save my image, I go back to Lightroom. Being very honest, what I do, and I almost recommend you guys considering it, is letting your image be for a couple of days. Come back in a couple of days with a new set of eyes, new perspective, and see if what you did, it's something that you like. The cool thing about this method is that I can always go ahead and go back to Photoshop Control E, but instead of saying edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, I can go to edit original, and I will be back in Photoshop and have all the layers and all the work that I done still preserved on the TIFF file without me having to worry about absolutely losing any of the information. So if at some point I want to go ahead and, well, I want to do some more dodging and burning, I go back to my dodging and burning layers, shadows, highlights. I know I will be losing all the stuff that's up here, but then again, I don't have to start from scratch, or I can simply just go ahead and create another dodge and burn layer and just keep building up of what I've done. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and save this again, close this again. And this is it. We got to the portion in where I hope that there's a whole bunch of questions that I get the pleasure of saying I don't know, and hopefully some of them do answer them.
And are we on?
Yeah, go ahead now.
Ben, I've never felt more like a novice than I do now. Really, like, I thought I had my technique kind of dialed in, but I'm looking forward to this PDF.
Definitely. I will go ahead and send it tonight. Make sure that you guys get it shortly. Carl, if you don't mind, I'll send it to you.
Absolutely, yes. I was going to say that, yeah, if you send it to me, I'll distribute it out to everybody.
And do you secretly work for Adobe?
I do not. Many years ago, my major was graphic design. I turned software engineer, but anyway, at some point I was an Adobe certified expert, but I am talking 2001. I don't really all of the stuff that you're seeing, as I mentioned to you guys, was me having the fortune of joining this group, and I cannot say enough, and the placement committee just putting enough, just being, the feedback that I got was great, but as I said, there was some feedback that really urged me to go ahead and revise what I was doing, and I put together a whole bunch of people doing different ways, and as I said, what you're seeing, it's my preferred way of doing it. And no, I do wish that Adobe would give me a kickback so I can keep traveling, but no, they're not doing that.
Thank you.
Wow, very enlightening.
Enlightening.
Is that the right word?
Yeah.
And dodging and burning.
And yeah, right.
Excellent. Any other question, guys?
I just want to say that I do most of my work in Lightroom. As far as black and white conversions, have you messed with the color calibration palette and some of the other tools, even the masking tools and things like that, to do black and white conversions just in Lightroom?
Yes, and I found them not to be as adept to be able to tweak to the degree that I want to tweak some images. But then again, I do want to let you know that sometimes when I am done doing the conversion in Photoshop, I do go to Lightroom and still go ahead and edit and change values in Lightroom. But I find it that in terms of the conversion, the amount of control that I get with the method that I show, it's a little bit greater than what I get in Lightroom. Now, like this image, for instance, once I'm happy with it, I would go to Lightroom and then do some other stuff, and sometimes I play with the presets and in the case of subjects, I do love those AI tools, so I use the pop a lot. But for the conversion itself, the short answer, and I know it's already a winded answer, but the short answer, it's I feel that I have far more control converting to Photoshop and then bring it to Lightroom and then finish doing the editing.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, between being able to use layers plus all the other tools that are available in Photoshop, you do have that, tweaking to the nth degree capability. that you don't have in Lightroom. I've been using Lightroom since version 2, and it's come a long, long way since then.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
it's a much, much more capable editor right now.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, in
yeah,
Camera Raw, it's the same thing between Photoshop and Lightroom, right? And
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
it's I don't know, I don't want to date myself, but even before Lightroom, there used to be a tool called ACDC.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, that
I
I
remember
used.
it.
Right, right. So, but no, I mean, I'm with you. I've been using Lightroom since the very beginning. I grudgingly at the beginning because I still have AC/DC, but no, I would not be able to go ahead and have any kind of workflow without Lightroom as the base for everything that I do.
Sure. Yeah. Did you see in the chat, Laura piped in and said she asked if you use curves for dodging and burning.
I don't. Um, I've I'm going to be very honest, and I promise that I was going to give you an I don't know. I've very lightly gotten into the curve method for dodging and burning. I just don't understand it enough to feel comfortable right now. The dodging and burning method that I use, it's a method that makes sense in my head. It's being able to isolate values above or below middle gray and then just going to town with them. I do have to see. I do have to gain more information with curves. But I promise that within a couple of weeks, I will go ahead and give you a much more educated answer. Just give me some time to try to wrap my head around that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, really, thank you, Ben. More thorough than I dreamt it would be. Really?
Yeah. Believe it or not, you get into a rhythm, and I do this for every image, and then I find myself that I can go from beginning to end with the process, at least to get it to the point that I let it sit for a couple of days within 10, 15 minutes per image. Now, I don't I don't convert every image. I mean, you guys seen that I do prefer to work mostly in black and white. But yeah, it's gotten to the point that it's almost an autopilot for me. So, 10 minutes later, I have an image. I said I let it sit. I've learned my lesson not to go ahead and rush it and submit it to a placement committee thinking that you're Ansel Adams. Take your time and try to be as objective as you can with your own work as possible. So, once I get to that point and, the final editing, it's a different story. But, that image that you see in the background, it's one of the images that I submitted for the placement committee. And after I received the review from them, I went ahead and revised this image. I probably worked about 2 days straight on this image, but then again, the results are day and night. I will go ahead and include in the PDF the image that I submitted and the image that ultimately won the Silver Award and the reFocus Award.
Well, yeah, that'd be great.
Ben, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Um, with the way masks have evolved in Lightroom, I find that dodging and burning doesn't actually describe what I do anymore. What it seems to me that what I'm doing is I'm isolating some part of the image with a mask, and then I'm processing that using a large percentage of the sliders that you have on the whole image, not all of them, but there are somewhere a dozen or 15 sliders. And then I might put a mask on a different part of the image. I might add to the mask, subtract from the mask, have multiple masks, and so on and so forth. But dodging and burning is a model that came out of the wet darkroom, but it doesn't really apply anymore to the way I think of Lightroom nowadays.
You're correct. I would agree with you. And as I said, that's what I do prefer doing my dodging and burning in Photoshop. The advantage of Photoshop, as I mentioned, it's the fact that I can go ahead and have a middle gray layer that I can go ahead and use as my convergence between dark and light values, right? The convergence points from those. So by me going ahead and creating an overlay or a soft light, fine middle gray, and then applying image, inverting that image, and me exposing highlights and just shadows on the stuff that it's being affected by the brush, to me that's valuable. As I said, I know that curves provide something similar. Now, when it comes to Lightroom, while yes, you can go ahead and mask based on luminosity, based on range, and isolate certain areas, and go ahead and use change your contrast, your whites, blacks, midtones, and exposure. It's nice. I don't think that you have enough control over what it is that you're doing for the purpose of dodging and burning, right? It's you remember back in the days when we first did test strips, and then we would do a test print, and then we would grab we didn't even have Sharpies at that time. I don't know what marker we would come, and we would start putting +2, -1, 5, 1, 0, 2, and you would have all this weird kind of map of what you want to do with the image. I don't think that Lightroom, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that Lightroom would allow me to have that enough control. And as you mentioned, and I'm agreeing with you, dodging and burning, it's coming from the wet process, right? It's being able to add luminosity, to add tonality, and to add contrast to a specific part of the image. I don't know if I answered your question, if I was just rambling, but just in short, I don't think that Lightroom, it's the better tool yet for dodging and burning.
Thanks. I just wanted to hear you talk about the subject, which you did, so it was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So do we have any more questions from anybody on Zoom or anybody in the room?
I'd encourage everyone to look at Ben's website, his Instagram page. He has literally hundreds of images, and we spent at least a decent amount of time on one image tonight, but his portfolio is, in my opinion, fairly mind-blowing.
Yep, I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. And I changed my website recently. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, a couple of months ago, I decided to drop corporate America and go full blast with photography. So I am transitioning websites to suit the more commercial portion of the photography that I'm doing, but also keep my personal portfolio the way it is, and then incorporate the new ventures that I'm engaging, a workshop in Mexico for Dia de los Muertos and things like that. So I'll make sure that I have updated website links for you guys to look. And thank you for your kind words, sincerely. And I mean, I do really appreciate, tremendously this group and the kind words, and anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Well, that was an excellent presentation. Ben, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge of all the research that you've done this past year to learn all those techniques, learn all those methods, and perfect them. Obviously, your resulting images, again, the award-winning image that's sitting behind you on the screen shows that you really know what you're doing. We're glad that you're here and part of the group. Glad that you were able to do this presentation for us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure, sincerely. And as I said, I'll have the PDF. I want to add a couple of things that I talked about, but I'll have it to you by morning at the latest. Well, I'm not gonna lie, by mid-evening tomorrow.
Sure. That's fine. All right,
Thank you,
folks, I think that's a wrap.
All right, Matt.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you,
big
guys.
thanks to everybody here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for letting me watch.
Oh, glad to have you, RJ. Hope to see you again. All right. Thank you, everybody, and good night.